all of a sudden my team sergeant's like, hey, Buck, let's get out and hoof it. Let's see what's going on. So we jump out and I look up and I see, it's just buildings, like right here to my right, 2-story buildings, and it's buildings to my left. And we're just right in the middle. And I for the first time, I had gotten this like super eerie feeling. I was like, somebody's watching me. Somebody's pointing their gun at me right now. I could feel it. My hair was going up on the back of my neck. I was terrified. I wanted with every ounce of me to get back in the NATV and the protection.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we hear the combat story of Sean Buck Rogers, a former Green Beret who served multiple deployments with various units, including 10th Special Forces Group, after escaping an incredibly difficult and harsh childhood. Buck transitioned to 19th Special Forces Group and eventually joined the law enforcement ranks, including time with SWAT. Since leaving the military and law enforcement, Sean's written a best-selling book titled Rising Above, a Green Beret's story of childhood trauma and ultimate healing. He became an ultramarathoner, founded the FNG Academy, and now produces content and leads a community trying to help other aspiring special operations candidates succeed in the selection and special forces and special operations worlds. Buck is working on getting his second book published and has several interesting irons in the fire that we touch on in this episode. I hope you enjoy this real and raw combat story with someone who's overcome so much and maintains an overwhelmingly positive attitude as much as I did. Sean, thanks for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
So I typically start out with your childhood and origin story, but when people have something that I would associate with a call sign, I kind of want to get that out of the way. So we got Sean Buck Rogers, right? Yeah. And Buck Rogers is kind of this legendary character. Where did it come from for you?
Yeah, so that was my first like kind of team experiences. I walked into the team room as a brand new 18 Bravo, and I was all stoked to be there. And I thought, there'd be some kind of like welcome, like, oh, what's up, dude? And, not like anyone would really care, but I thought that at least they'd be like, well, hey man, welcome to the team. And I walk in and the whole team just like completely ignores me. Like not one person even looks up, and I'm just standing there. And looking back on it, like obviously they knew I was coming, so I think it was a little orchestrated, but and so I was like, okay, this is awkward. And then I go to the medic. I didn't at the time. He's in 18 Delta. I think he's in Delta Force now, or CAG. But I was like, hey man, I'm Sean Rogers, and he's like, don't fucking talk to me. Team sergeant's over there. And I was like, shit. So I go over to the team sergeant. I stand at parade rest, and I was like, hey, Master Sergeant, I'm your new Bravo. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, and all this stuff. And he's just like, what's your name? And I was like, it's Sean Rogers. And he's like, Rogers, like Buck Rogers. And I was like, yep, yeah, like Buck Rogers. And he's just like yelled at me for standing at parade rest, said I looked like an idiot, and then went back to ignoring me. So I literally just walked out of the team room after that, because I just like got tired of standing there awkwardly, and I didn't know, like I didn't have anything to do in that room. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm Buck Rogers now, and just walked out and went home for the day. I was like, fuck this.
Did you grow up with the name Buck Rogers? Like, had that come up before playing sports or just at school?
Never once. The things that people used to like associate me with is especially before I had my beard, was what's that cartoon? It's got Patty Mayonnaise in it. Doug. Do you remember Doug?
No, I don't know.
So
this one.
Yeah, so it's a cartoon, and the dude's got a he's got a big nose and a small chin like me. And so people would be like, what's up, Doug? And I'm like, oh, fuck you guys. What other ones did I get?
I see it now. I'm looking. I just looked it up. That's good stuff.
What is it called? What's the show called?
I just looked up Patty Mayonnaise, but it's the TV series Doug.
It's just called Doug. That's the show. Okay.
Yeah, Disney TV. Nickelodeon turned Disney TV series. You do not look like that guy, bro. Oh man.
So that was the
Dude.
one I got when I was a kid. So this was the first time I got fucking Buck Rogers. But you know, I don't. Uh, in basic, they would be like, "Roger that, Rogers," and I was like, "That's so fucking stupid. You gotta do better than that." So, but then the funny thing, I thought the Buck Rogers comment was just gonna be the stupid thing that went away. And then when I came back to the team room, I think it was like a Friday. So when I came back Monday, everyone was just like, "Oh, what's up, Buck? Hey, Buck, do this, Buck, do that." And I was like, "Is this fucking happening? Like,
Shit.
am I just Buck now? Like, fuck, dude." And you know, Buck came along with a bright neon fucking hat that said "fucking new guy" on it. It says 0226 fucking new guy. And they're like, "You will not take this hat off." And I was like, "This is so embarrassing." And the lead up to that was, I was my team when I got to the company was in Africa. So I'd been on the B team for like 2-3 months waiting for them to get back. So by the time they got back, you know, my classmates had already been on the teams for 3 months. So they're like getting through their new guy phase and all this stuff. And I'm just, I did the new guy phase as on the B team. And then I just show up and now I'm wearing a fucking bright neon hat everywhere. It says fucking new guy on it. And I was like, this sucks my ass. And my buddies were walking around with like Halo fucking team hats. And they're like, "Oh, dude, I just got to a Halo team." And I was like, fuck, I hate this.
I like that you turn it around and now use it as the FNG Academy. It's like it
Yeah.
came full circle for you.
Yeah.
Dude. Oh, two of the other guys I interviewed that were a couple of Green Berets, but that just come to mind, like Ryan Hendrickson, who's written a great book and, you know, was injured. Super nice guy. He described his first time walking into a team room like they just made him stand at the door, outside the door, the whole day, like 8 hours. Couldn't come
Yeah.
in, wouldn't talk to him. Same
Yeah.
thing. And then, oh man, I just interviewed Travis Hall, who runs Second Chance Canine. So he did like 20 years in, and he got sent straight into Iraq to meet his team. And I think that's the best case, dude. Like,
Yes,
there's
it
no
is.
time for hazing. He's like, they just
Yes.
showed up, dropped guns at my feet, and then we were on a mission.
That's
So
that's perfect. And I begged to go to Africa. I was like, just send me with the team, because then you just link up and you got work to do. It's not like, you know, let's fuck with this guy. It's like, hey, this needs to get done, and that's your piece of the pie now. So go get it done. And by the time you get back, yeah, you're already one of the guys. So I was like begging. They're like, they don't need you in Africa. So they're like, there's not a lot going on, you know. And I think my team had been in like a couple gunfights. Like it wasn't anything. It just wasn't a lot going on. So they're like, just stay here, dude. Like, you don't want to go to Africa. It sucks anyway. And I was like, fuck. And then I ended up doing the new guy thing on the B team and then on the fucking ODA once they got back. So yeah, best case scenario, just get your ass wherever they are and get in some missions.
Dude. God. All right. So the other thing I wanted to ask you after preparing for this interview was, I mean, you got your hands in a lot of pots, and I know we'll get to this as well, but you know, you've got the book cover behind you, FNG Academy. If somebody asks you like, hey, Buck, what do you do now? What do you tell them?
Oh, wow. How did you pick that up? That's like a point of contention. It's like a weird thing.
I have no idea. I just think we're in this space where, could you imagine like 10 years ago when you show up to the team room and if you were like, hey guys, I'm going to go be a YouTube creator one day, like what people would say. So what do you tell people now?
I still don't know. I'm 100% honest. It's a weird, awkward thing. And just like you've had such an amazing career, like everything, when you're giving me your background, it's so impressive. Right. And so as men, or as women too, I'm sure the same, as we get so attached to these titles that it's like, it's a sense of pride, you know, when somebody asks you what you're doing, you're like, oh, I'm special forces, or for you, like I'm a fucking pilot, or I'm a CIA. Like it's instantly like this credibility stamp. And I did not anticipate, you know, what it would be like to get rid of that. So I went from special forces and then I went law enforcement. I got on a special team in law enforcement. So I was like, oh, I'm on the impact team. I just traded one title for the other. So now I still don't know what to tell people. And I kind of just make it a joke every time they ask, like, oh, what do you do now? And I just say, I don't know. And they're like, well, how do you not know? And I'm like, I don't know what it is. Like I make videos. I guess I'm a YouTuber. I was like, I wrote a book. I'm in this weird realm of like, who fucking knows what it is that I do?
Yeah. I
I
will
love
say, I
it
mean,
though.
you
It's
are a
fun.
best-selling author. Like that's a pretty cool accolade or title to have, but it's not like what we came from where it was very clear, like, yeah, I was a Green Beret or whatever it was in the past.
Yeah.
Damn.
And I appreciate you saying that. And I think, a lot of times, at least for me, is I don't see myself as anything special. I really don't. And I see what happens. And this is something I try to I'm trying to convey in the second book is the weird thing. And I don't know if this is kind of universal, but once you step into a realm and you try your best and you work really hard, you find that other people have also done that thing. And you also find the ones that have done it so much better than you that I find myself always at the bottom of the totem pole. So people are like, oh, you're a best-selling author. I'm like, sure, for Amazon, but there's New York Times bestsellers, there's Jocko, there's Goggins, there's these people who are doing it. There's so many of us, and I don't want to downplay, anybody writing a book, because I think more people should write books because so many people have amazing stories. But once you step into the arena with these people that are all doing things that you just like, yeah, but so have all they, and you
Yeah.
see the crowd of them that have all done, these things. And it's hard to feel like that's an accomplishment. And I think that's something I'm kind of dealing with now.
Well, let's take a page out of the book and now let's jump back to you as a kid. I mean, I don't know if you were not creating content, but if you were a performer, I know you had some tough times as a kid though. So can you kind of talk us through what it was like for you growing up? I know it had a huge impact on what you became.
Yeah. So growing up was a nightmare. And I feel like that's where my appreciation for everything is now, and like how happy I am to be doing this and to be doing something I love. And shit, I wake up and I look at having a nice home and a nice, leather seats in my car, and I'm like, this is success. This is what success looks like, is I get to sit on these nice seats and be in a nice home in a neighborhood that I could be proud of and my kid is proud of. Because I recently went back to where I was from because our videographer's doing like a documentary on me, and he wanted to film it. And we go back, and it was so eerie. And the place had not gotten any better. So I was in Phelan, California. It's just like a kind of remote desert, small town. And it's really an anything goes kind of place. Like when you're out there, it's just so much crime and so few police officers. You do whatever you want. But my dad left when I was 1. And then my mom was just boyfriend after boyfriend of just, trauma and craziness. And, one was an alcoholic, and I watched her get, knocked out, and she drove her car into the house. And it was like, I got shot at the first time when I was like 8 years old. My brother and I got, I remember looking out the back window, like holding onto the seat, and this guy is chasing us in the car. And I'm just staring at him like, this is so cool. He's got like poofs of smoke coming out of the back of it, because he's just hauling through the desert, and we're hauling, and there's dust everywhere. And I was like, this is awesome. And we get to the house, and my brother gets out of the car because he's 2 years older than me. He starts yelling at my mom, and I was like, why is he so upset? That was like really cool. And he was saying that she almost killed me. And so he was really upset with her for the fact that she almost killed me. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, look. And there was a bullet hole that split the roof of the car. And then there was one that went into the emblem in the back. Well, that emblem was right where my chest was. So the only reason I didn't get killed is because the emblem like ricocheted the bullet down into the trunk of the car. Those are kind of the highlights and things I talk about in the book. But really the hardest part was the fact that kind of crazy behavior and those wild experiences were just regular. So stress, as far back as I can remember, was always like through the roof anxiety of what's coming next. Is tonight going to be the night my mom gets beat? Is tonight going to be the night that we get beat? Is someone going to come after us? Is one of our boyfriends relapse into drug addiction? Is he going to do something crazy, rob us blind? There was always something. So I hated my life as a kid, and I was miserable all the time.
And I think you didn't touch on it here, but I think in the book you described like you're not even sure you're going to eat some nights, right? Like
Yeah.
just the lowest part of the totem pole that you could ever be on, basically. And you mentioned your dad
Yeah.
left when you were 1. Did you ever meet him again?
Yeah. So at some point, I think it was like 14, and I was like, I've had enough. So I ended up, because my mom used to threaten us all the time about my dad. She's like, he's this horrible person, and he's gonna, like, if you reach out to him, you're gonna hate him. He's gonna make your life hell. So she would always like build up this fear of my dad. And something my brother and I were talking about recently, he was like, dude, the fear was constant. So like, Child Protective Services used to come to our house all the time. Yeah, whether it be the school calling, or family calling, whatever, because the cops were at our house all the time. Like, it was every cop in the town knew my mom's name, and so they were around. And so you think about it, like, where was Child Protective Services when all this craziness was happening? And then me and my brother were talking about it. He's like, Mom used to tell us all the time. And once he told me, I was like, I remember that. That if Child Protective Services pick us up, they're going to take away my sister, and then my sister is going to go to a house of like some psychopath or some like molester, and then they're going to split my brother and I. So we're going to be, so she was in our heads psychologically. And I'm going to be honest with you, to this day, I feel the effects of the psychological abuse.
For sure. Yeah.
So it's like when she gets intoxicated and starts making calls to my brother and threats, and she still does that stuff to this day. And still there's a part of me that it cringes me to the point where it's like, I don't feel like I'm completely free of her. And now I could look back and realize it's because of all that psychological abuse, and control and manipulation when I was a kid. But part of that manipulation was convincing my brother and I that my dad was this like horrible human being. And so finally at like 14, I was like, listen, anywhere, I don't care if he's as horrible as you say he is, he's got to be better than this. And so I reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, you can come out to New York. He's like, but we have to figure out how to get you out here. So then it became this like escape plan that I had to create to like get out of feeling and make it to my dad's in New York.
Damn. And did you end up living with your dad for like high school, basically?
Yeah. So I ended up, we came up with a plan. He was like, you need to call the police department and ask them what they need. The police department told me that I needed a letter, saying that she's given custody to my dad. She's like, if you have that letter, then we won't, force you to go back and take you in as a runaway, because she's going to report you as a runaway. She always did. I ran away constantly, and the cops always, it was like, it would make me sick to my stomach, because it's like I'm running away. One night in particular, I remember she was like I was trying to get out of the house, and she's like ripping my shirt and like punching me. And then she pins me to the ground and sits on my chest. And she's a big woman. And I was, I was a little like 12, 13. And she sits on my arms with her knees on both arms, and then just sits her butt on my chest. And so I'm hyperventilating and panicking until the point where like I'm freaking out. I thought I was going to pass out. And then I finally like push her off. I get away, I run away, and the cops show up, and they're like, hey man, your mom called, get in the car, and they would take me back. So it was constantly this cycle of almost no matter what, the cops would show up and do her bidding. So I really didn't trust police, and I resented law enforcement. So we were afraid the same thing was going to happen. So I ended up convincing her by basically pissing her off to sign the letter. And then she finally signed it. I packed all my stuff throughout the night, like little at a time, and hid it in the closet. So I left my room kind of a mess, but I had all my stuff that I really wanted packed in the closet. So I called my dad. He got me the plane ticket for 3 days. I had to call my cousin to hide me out for those 3 days, which thankfully she did. And then she gave me a ride to the airport, and then I was free. Of course she called the cops and, reported me as a runaway, but I gave them that letter, and they were like, nope, we're going to accept this. And they were like, have a good life.
Dang. And did you go with your brother, or was he still there?
No, yeah, so he stayed in Phelan because he was really attached to my grandparents. My grandparents were phenomenal human beings. They were just really busy, running their business. And to be honest with you, like a lot of the kids were not, doing great, and that took a lot from my grandparents to have to always, corral my
Yeah.
mom, and so um, they were busy with their own kids'
Amazing.
problems. So my brother ended up staying. I went by myself. Me and my dad kind of got along. It wasn't bad. We were kind of more like roommates, as one of my buddies said. He was like, dude, you and your parents are like, you're like roommates. Like, I've never seen anything like this. They do their own thing and you do yours. And I was like, yeah, I love it. It's like, what are parents supposed to do? So then my dad and his wife decided that they were going to move to Colorado. And they're like, hey, we're moving to Colorado. And that was my senior year in high school. So at first I was like, okay, I'm down for a move to Colorado. Let's do it. And everything was great. And then I realized that, like, damn, if I move to Colorado, I'm gonna have to start over in high school again. And like starting over by myself was miserable. Like when I was in Phelan, like I grew up with all those kids. My brother was there. So if I was gonna get in a fight, which we fought a lot, my brother always had my back. So it would be like, oh, you're gonna mess with me, then you'll meet us after school. You get your brother and we'll meet my brother. And I always I pulled from his strength, and the fact that I was never alone. So even if we were going to lose that fight, at least we were doing it together. And I didn't realize the impact of going and being by myself, and then I was targeted because I was by myself. So I remember, one day in class, I was in the hallways and some dude was like, Sean. And I was like, uh-oh, nobody knows me yet. So this isn't good that someone's calling my name. And I turn around, guy punches me in the mouth. And so we start fighting. And I thought I was gonna get in trouble. So I push off and I walk away, and the teacher's like, was there a fight? And I was like, nope, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was like that moment when I realized that, like, this sucks. I'm alone. Like, this is gonna be hard. So then I get invited to a party. And I was like, cool, they're trying to, I'm gonna make some friends. Well, that party was a setup because the guy that punched me, yeah, his friend was like, oh, he didn't fight back. So now I'm gonna get a piece. So that whole party was a setup to get me alone. And so I go to the party and I'm hanging out and I'm thinking I'm gonna make some friends. And all of a sudden, when the owner of the house comes down and goes, hey, this guy Ian's outside and he wants to fight you. And I was like, who the fuck is Ian? I was like, I don't even know any of you guys. And why does everyone want to fucking fight me? And so I go outside and the whole parking lot is full. Like the whole front of his, sorry, not a parking lot, the front of his house, his driveway is packed full of people. There's like 100 fucking kids out there from my high school. And they're all in a circle. And there's this dude standing in the middle. So I was like, I'm guessing that's Ian. I was like, I don't even know. So I look at the owner, and I was the owner of the house, this, the son of the owner. He was a, big dude, football player. And I was like, I looked at him, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't even know this guy. And he goes, this is what you're going to do. You're going to walk up to him and you're going to hit him as hard as you can. That's what you're going to do. And I was like, all right. And I'll never forget, like I was moving towards him, but my body was just completely filled with anxiety and fear and adrenaline. Like I couldn't even feel my legs anymore. And the crazy thing, my legs kept moving forward. Like I kept stepping towards him. And I didn't even know what I was going to do when I got to him. I was just like nervously walking towards him because I was like, I have no other option. I'm like, there's a whole circle of kids surrounding it. Like, what are they going to do if I don't? Are they going to jump me if I don't fight them? So I get to him and I was like, what now? And all of a sudden my arm just goes back and I cranked him. Boom. And I looked at my hand and I looked at him and I was like, oh, I just hit him. I couldn't believe it. And then so he ended up spearing me into the car. I tried to run. I thought in my head, if I run with him, his head will hit the car and he'll knock out. He didn't. And then so we just both slam into the car. He grabs me and like spins me. My shoe flies off. It scrapes the top of my foot. So my toe, like the whole skin on the top of my toe comes off. So I'm like limping around with no shoe on. And then we're just standing there and we're both dead tired. Like my lungs hurt so bad. I couldn't breathe anymore. And I could look at him and he couldn't breathe anymore. His eyes swollen up. I'm hurting. And then we just stopped. And I said, "You've had enough." And then I walked away, and I was good after that. Nobody tried to fight me after that. It was like,
Damn.
yeah. So sorry. The reason I tell that story is
Yeah.
because now I'm thinking I'm going to go to Colorado now and try to do that all again. I was like, nope.
Yeah.
So I told my dad, I was like, "Hey man," and I thought he would have respect for me, knowing what I went through to get to New York to live with him, you know? So I thought he would be like, "Hey, I know you're, you know, taking care of yourself. So be a man, and, you know, I wish you the best." That's what I thought he was going to say. And instead he's like, he flips out. So one day I come home and like my room is trashed. Like he took all my stuff. He took all my clothes. He trashed my room. I had screens because I started a clothing company in high school, and he was helping me because he was starting a clothing company. So I was like, "Hey, if you let me have my own designs, I'll sell some shirts. And if I could sell that first batch, will you let me like have my own company and use your equipment? And I'll just pay for the time." And he was like, "Yeah, if you could sell." And so I ended up selling out. Like the minute I finished the batch, I would sell out. So it was called Wicked Obsessions. And so I was like, "Man, this is amazing." And so I had all my screens of the different designs lined up in my room. And I was so proud of those things. And I come back and every one of them had a slash, an X slash through them. So all the screens were destroyed. And I was like, "Man, this dude he's twisted, man." I was like, he's not, he's just kind of like my mom in a way, to where if he doesn't, if he doesn't like what you're doing, he's like completely flips and is against you. So we had that clash. And then finally he kind of concedes and he's like, "Look, if you stay with family, I'll let you stay." He goes, "But I'm not leaving you here with friends." And I was like, "Oh, what family do I have here?" And he's like, "Well, my mom's here, but she's not going to let you live with her." And I was like, "Well, where does she live?" And he's like, "This is where she lives." And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go talk to her." Drove right to her house. And I was like, "Hey, Joe's son, we've met like once. I need to live with you."
I mean, this
And
is your
she's like,
grandmother.
yeah. So this is the grandmother on my dad's side. So I didn't, I've met her like maybe once before that.
Wow.
And she goes, "Okay." Man, I was like, "Sweet, thank you." And I went and told my dad. He's like, "What?" She said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah." So I'm gonna move in with her. And he's like, "All right, fine." And then he went to Colorado and talked to him for years after that.
Damn. So needless to say, you grew up fast, man. Like, you didn't have parents that really loved you. As not trying to get all psychological here, but like that's a pretty stark difference than the way a lot of people end up growing up. So where on earth does the military come into play for you?
So I had no intention to join the military. Like, I'm not one of those guys that was like, "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to serve my country. I can't wait." And I had zero interest. I was
You
like,
were just surviving, man.
yeah,
honestly.
Exactly. I was like, I had no thought of the future at all. And then, so I ended up getting married. 6 months later, I walk in on my new wife in bed with another dude. So I lose my shit. And I was like, I kind of had an epiphany that like, I could do one of two things. Cause it was the first time in my life that like, which is crazy considering what I'd been through. The first time in my life I was depressed. Like I'd never felt that before.
Wow.
Because as a kid growing up, it's like, it's your fault. My life is hard and I hate it, but it's your fault. So when I'm free of you, I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to make a life for myself. And it's going to be better than this. So I'm not responsible for my mom's decisions or my dad's decisions. That's not on me. But when she cheated on me, that was the first time where it was like, shit, this is my decision. I chose her. I decided to marry her. This is my life now. And it just took a horrible turn south. Something that I thought men, you think men are the ones that are going to cheat. Like, so in your head, you're like, "Hey, I'm faithful. I'm good," and then to walk in with her in bed with somebody, it wrecked me. And so it was the first time that I found myself in a depression. And I was like, I got to do something. Like I didn't I didn't make it this far to just like implode over a woman.
And you're like 18, 19 at this time?
Yeah, well, I think I was like, yeah, like 20, because we'd been together since I actually met her my senior year of high school. She was in college at the time, and so we'd been together for like 4 years, and then finally we got married, and then that happened. So I think I was like 2021 at the time, and that's when I had the kind of a breakthrough moment where it was like she's gonna beat me, and I'm gonna beat myself. Basically, I'm like, my life is going down the drain because I was like drinking every day. For like, it wasn't for a long stretch, but it was like 4 days of this like depression last where I just slept. Like, I could sleep like nonstop. I didn't, if I woke up, I was drinking alcohol and then going back to sleep. And then I would like wake up and like cry. And then I started smoking cigarette. I didn't care. I was just like, anything that like takes my mind away from what just happened. And by day 4, I was like, wow, I've never been in this kind of zone before. Like, I didn't even know this zone existed. And I was like, so what do I do? I was like, I could either let this beat me, or I could beat her by showing her that she could never get me back and that she made a huge mistake. And I was like, so how do I do that? I was like, well, in order to do that, I can't become this like alcoholic that sleeps all day, because then she's going to think that, hey, I made the right decision. So not that my thought process was good to, put it on her, but I was like, okay, so I'm going to get into school and I'm going to get a really good job, and I'm going to show her that she made a mistake and move on that way. So I started EMT school, and the process of becoming a firefighter. I did signed up for college and did a bunch of classes, and then in EMT school, I ended up getting in a fight. I got kicked out. And then the next morning, I just walked into the recruiter's office and was like, I keep messing up, but I know I need to make something better with my life. And I was like, so maybe the Army, they have this reputation of being, tough guys. So I was like, they're not going to kick me out for getting in a fight. Like, they'll accept me for, being broken and being messed up, and they'll work with me. So maybe that's the place I need to go, because civilian life was not willing to work with me. I was too uncontrollable,
Damn. So you just walked right in, and then presumably then, if you don't know anything about the military, how did you set yourself up to get the MOS that you end up getting?
So I walked in and I said, all I knew was like Rangers had this reputation. I've always heard Rangers, Rangers are tough. And my grandfather was in the Air Force, and he was in the Korean War, and he was an MP, and he signed up when he was like 16. He just lied about his age and signed up. And so I was like, Grandpa, I'm gonna be a Ranger. He was like, that's a reputation that precedes him. He's like, that's a man's job. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So I walked in, and the recruiter was like, can I help you? And I was like, yes, sir. I want to be a Ranger. He's like, all right. And he's like, took my information, did a quick clear. And he's like, come back tomorrow and I'll see what we can get. I was like, cool. I was in there for the minimal amount of time you could possibly be in a recruiter's office. And I just walked out. I was like, well, I guess that's what I'm doing. And I came back the next morning. He goes, all right, man, I got good news and bad news. And by this time, like throughout the night in that day, like I'm getting set in my mind that I'm going to be a Ranger. So like the idea of losing that was already too much to bear. I was like, I'm doing that. And he was like, I got you a Ranger contract. I was like, okay, I'm good. That's all I care about. He goes, but the infantry slots are full. He's like, so the only job I can get you in Ranger Regiment is cooking. And I was like, what? I was like, what? I didn't even know that was a MOS in the military. I thought you had everyone's a shooter and everyone's a infantryman. So I was like, well, how long do I got to do that? And he's like, dude, get into Ranger Regiment, pass RASP, go pass airborne school, couple months. I was like, oh, a couple months. I was like, I could do anything for a couple months. I was like, I don't care what the job is. I could do it for a couple months. And obviously he lied. So, so I went to Ranger selection. Dick Couch was doing his book on that class. So it was way ramped up, which isn't to no fault of the cadre. I mean, not making that an excuse. I wasn't ready knowledge wise to like not to stay uninjured. If I would have passed Ranger selection, it would have been based on luck, because I was making stupid decisions like swimming in my broken in boots for the swim test and then lacing up a brand new out of the box pair of boots for a ruck run. And then so I rolled my ankle super bad. I got Achilles tendonitis and I was like bleeding. I finished the ruck like with blood pouring down my elbow and my knees, and I couldn't get my boot off because it swelled up so big and stuff. So then I went to Germany, 173rd, and from there healed up, trained up, and then went to SFAS.
So
I wasn't going to be
sent you to Germany.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
Damn.
So that was like a cool thing, because I was not getting hurt in RASP was one of the biggest like kick in the nuts for me, right? Because like I'm a young man trying to figure out if I have what it takes. Am I tough? Am I mentally tough? Am I weak? Like what am I? I've never had my dad wasn't around to like instill anything. My mom didn't instill anything. So I'm like,
dude, you're on your own.
Yeah. I'm looking at cadre to basically tell me what kind of man I am. So the fact that they didn't really have a chance because I got hurt, it was heartbreaking. So it's kind of the silver lining was when they're like, hey, you got orders to Germany. And I was like, what? I'm going to get to travel? Like I'm this poor kid from a trailer. You're going to send me to Germany? I was like, heck yeah, dude, let's do that. I'm going to go check that out.
Where'd you go? Where's the 17? I thought they were in Vicenza. Where are they at in Germany?
So they are now. They were in, they had two bases. One was in Italy and one was in Bamberg, Germany.
Nice.
And so you can go to Germany. They ended up closing that base down, so it's not open anymore. Everyone's in Italy now.
Damn.
But yeah, I was excited. I got there and I was like, Germany, dude, this is going to be cool. I was like, I'm going to get some traveling in and get some, some exposure to the world, something that I never thought, I would have the opportunity to do.
Dude, that was our first assignment. I went to near Würzburg. It was Bad Windsheim, Illesheim, Katterbach. So like they had a couple air bases there that you could fly out of. And that was so much fun when you're young and can travel. And
yes.
Damn.
And to Germany, it's so clean and like,
oh, it's so nice.
Food is the best food I've ever had in my life.
The beer is great. It's so good.
Beer. Yeah. They drank beer at everything. I did my first marathon there and they had beer tents at the marathon. I was like, you guys are nuts. Who drinks beer while they're running 26.2 miles? Like, you guys are crazy. Everything had beer.
Dude. All right. What an upbringing you had, man. All right. So maybe, I guess, can we just do timing real quick? Like what year is it when you're in Germany just before you go to selection?
So I joined late 2009. I left early 2010 to basic AIT, airborne, RASP, got hurt in RASP. So sometime 2010, probably 6 months. So like June, July. Yeah. So that makes sense because July RASP got canceled because it was too hot. So then I was in rain pre-RASP, they called it, which just means they were smoking us for an extra month.
Yep.
And then I got hurt. So then like September probably of 2010, I get to Germany. I do the cook thing for probably like 4 months before I convinced the sergeant major somehow to take a chance on a cook and make him make me his personal security detachment for the upcoming deployment to Afghanistan. That would probably be in 2011. Yeah, into 2011. Okay. And then so deployed to Afghanistan, come back 2012, 2012, go to selection, start the Q course. I graduate the Q course 2015.
Damn.
So I know that was a jumble.
No, that's good. I just wanted to get the timing down on this. All right. So were you, I know that we'll talk about this later, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the FNG Academy is really designed. I mean, it's interesting content, and it looks like it's designed to help people get through these programs, right? So it's almost like
Absolutely.
you're taking, I'm assuming that what you went through in RASP and just explaining the basics of like what boot to pick and what gear to take came into play. I wonder if you could just speak briefly about the time and selection. Did you feel like you were better prepared going into that?
100%. So like the difference between my Ranger experience and the Special Forces experience was night and day. So, I did research, I did homework. Like Ranger, I was like, I'm going to show up and they're going to beat me up until I run out of things for them to beat me up, and then I'll pass or fail. And then Special Forces selection, I was like, forget that. Like that was a stupid idea. Now I did all the research I could. I was in Afghanistan training for selection. So like my whole Afghanistan trip, if we weren't out, on mission, and my missions then were just going with the sergeant major to meet, other outposts to meet all his people and watching his back. But if we weren't out doing that, I was training for selection. So I was that guy rucking, around the perimeter of the fob all the time. And, so yeah, I researched boots. I broke in my boots. I rucked like crazy to try and find where the hot spots were in my feet, in my hips. I stretched like mad this time. I worked out, twice a day. I did everything differently based on that, how unprepared I was in Ranger selection. I was like, I'm not going to do that again. So yeah, it helped tremendously.
Okay. That's cool. All right. If we then jump to you coming out of the Q course, you mentioned your arrival at your unit is less than
less
what
than
you were
ideal,
hoping for. Yeah, less than ideal. Take us maybe to the first time you're in combat with an SF team. Where do you guys end up going, and what is it like for you when you finally get there?
Yeah, so we went to Afghanistan, and I'd already been targeted for my first deployment, but I never got to shoot back. I was like, we were getting mortared like 5 times a day on fob shank. My hut was under the PTIDs, so the balloon gave the Taliban an aiming point. So every time they aimed at that balloon, it would land right where we were all sleeping in our tents. And so the alarm would go off so much, like all night long, that it was like we finally said screw it, because the idea was that the alarm goes off, you go to the concrete bunker, and then you sit there and you guys wait. And like on the first part of deployment, we're like, yeah, and we run in there and we'd be all like, oh man, and like, and then we'd go back, but by the end of the deployment, like, if it's my time, it's my time. And the alarm would go off and you'd be like, just sleeping, like, I'm not running to that damn bunker anymore. And then rounds would go off. And so I think the first experience in that, like, just as a regular Army guy, and like, it was so weird. I was like, man, someone's trying to kill me. And like that was weird to me. I was like, this guy doesn't know who I am. They don't know anything about me, but he just tried to kill me and almost succeeded in killing a bunch of us. And as stupid as that sounds, like, yeah, of course it's war. Some people are trying to kill you. It's still a strange experience to adapt to, that another man like dislikes you enough just based on the flag you're wearing on your shoulder, that he's actively trying to take your life. And that was a weird transition point for me. But by the end of it, I had gotten so tired of being shot at and not being able to shoot back, that when I finally make it to Special Forces and I was like back in Afghanistan, almost in the same location, we're only a drive away from the first 5 I was at getting shot at all the time. I was like, now it's time to be in a gunfight and not just be on a one-way range with them shooting at us. So it was a good feeling.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, the balloon you're talking about is like this static line. It's a line that goes up to, basically, it can be a huge balloon, basically, that's got cameras and optics and different electronics on it to protect the base and keep an eye out. But you're right, it's like an aiming point for people if they want to know where your base is. as we were flying in as pilots, we'd be looking for that thing like, oh, there's the base there. Let's navigate our way in.
Yeah. Yeah. So they would sit and just, line up their mortars and just aim at that point, because they had all kinds of systems to where, whether it's ice melting or whatever kind of mechanism they use. So they didn't have to be there when the rounds would shoot off. So they would, set it up, aim at that blimp, that balloon, and man, we were right underneath it. So it was just a horrible spot on the base.
Man.
And then one mission we went, my sergeant major and I left, and we get a call and they're like, hey, half the fob just got blown up. And I was like, what? And so they sent us a video of it, and it was a huge semi truck drives up to the fob and then parks at the gate and just ignites it, and it levels half the fob. So we spend the next luckily we weren't there. No, the only people that got killed, unfortunately, were the Afghan workers. So they only killed their own people, which is still a shame. Loss of life is still a shame. But we spent the next 2 weeks cleaning up piss bottles and tent pieces and tent fragments, because half the fob was just leveled
nasty.
by this. Yeah, it was gross. And you'd be surprised, you think men are the sole responsibility of pee bottles, but trust me, women fill up more than their fair share of pee bottles. It was it was disgusting. You would think the fob was sponsored by Yellow Gatorade. It was everywhere. Everywhere.
Oh man. So I imagine that there's a different feeling for you that second time you're downrange with a team where, I guess you're still the low man on the totem pole within the team, but you're still at an elevated position as compared to the conventional forces that might be at a neighboring base. I assume you're not spending time doing that same sort of thing. How long is it until you're outside the wire that first time?
Almost immediately. Yeah. So we got to Afghanistan and it was like, hey, we're rolling out. We need to get our feet wet. And that's one thing my team sergeant was all about. He was like, we can't get comfortable on this fob. So even though we don't have a mission lined up just yet, because we're working on intel and gathering, he's like, we're going to drive up to a sister team. And if we take contact along the way, cool, we'll get in a gunfight and get things figured out. But we're not going to sit on the fob and start to get comfortable. So right out of the gate, we set up our own little mission to go link up with another, a sister team at a different base. And that was my first time where I was like, we're basically going looking for trouble. That first run out, nothing happened, but that ended up being one of the few times that we would leave the wire and nothing happened. And I just remember I've never been so alert in my life. I was scanning every shadow, everything. I was looking for any kind of clue. And then it's funny because you go from that heightened sense, and then all of a sudden I think about once we started to really get into combat and we were deep in ISIS territory, there was a point where me and my medic, we had gotten to this guy's compound and we were so exhausted from the heat. It was 120 degrees and we've been humping it all day, just working through, getting in these little gunfights throughout this village. And we get to this guy's house and it's you could tell he was an elevated position within ISIS. He had a colorful everything. He had really nice furniture inside his little hut, that none of the other huts had. So we're like, well, this is as good a spot as any. And we just dropped our pants down to our ankles, just laying in our underwear, took our kid off and laid on his bed. And we're like, oh my, because we were about to heat cat. It was so hot. And so we both took a 10-minute power nap, and things are blowing up. There's active gunfights going on outside, and we're just and
why are the two of you on your own?
Well, we had our commandos with us. And so we were like, hey, commandos are dying too. You guys, chill, drink some water, eat some food if you got it. And we're going to, take a 10-minute break. But because we have our own unit, and that's why I think, people don't really understand about Green Berets sometimes, is we don't operate together. We don't get the luxury of going out as a team and kicking down doors together, because that would be amazing. You know, a team full of Green Berets doing CQB together would be a dream. You know, I've done more CQB training with those guys than I've ever done in my entire life. I know what they're going to do. I know who the jackrabbits are. I know who's slow and methodical. You know, we practice together. But once you get in combat, two of you go with this group of commandos, two of you go with this group of commandos. You know, we're going to clear this push together, or, you know, separate but simultaneously. And then, you know, we'll link up at some other time. And, you know, it's always separate. So there's only two of us, and then we have 15 commandos with us.
Yeah. What's a jackrabbit in terms of CQB?
He's fast. He's like, pew, like through the door, taking off. So, you know, like we need to know how each other reacts going through the doors in CQB, because if you're a jackrabbit, I know that I have to chase you, because if I don't chase you, if I don't know you're a jackrabbit, and let's say I'm number 2 man, you take off in that door, you lost me. So now as you're clearing your first corner, your back is exposed because I'm not in yet clearing the second corner. So if I know you're a jackrabbit, I'm chasing you in, so that way I could break the corner simultaneously to make sure you're not getting shot in the back.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true. If that number 1 man is super slow, like heel to toe walker, methodical, and I go running in, now I'm going to hit him and I'm going to throw him off his shot, and I'm going to ruin my entry. So it's really a dance to learn, you know, how each person likes to move. And the minute you throw us in with a bunch of commandos, that dance is out the window. Good luck, you know.
What were you? If somebody was like, "Hey, is Sean a jackrabbit or is he slow and methodical?" What would they say you are?
Yeah, I'm not the jackrabbit. I don't like to run into getting shot at. I think slow and methodical. It's you know, smooth is fast. Smooth is fast. I try to take that approach.
Yeah.
But there's, you know, and then I started like training when I was in the police department, seeing some of the SWAT guys, and they have a technique. I think they call it like chase the rabbit, to where number 1 man goes in so fast and moves so fast that if somebody's training on him to shoot him, they're behind the curve chasing him.
Wow, interesting.
So they call it chase the rabbit. And then number 2 man is then slow and methodical to take that guy out. So it's out there. I mean, it's a tactic, I guess.
Yeah. Dang. So, and then the other thing, just before we jump back into one of these experiences, I know a lot of guys that I'll talk to who are Green Berets will say, just like you said, you know, like you're there to train other forces and be this force multiplier. And oftentimes they'll say that's why they got into that. They love that mission, as opposed to like the direct action, which you might do somewhere else or do it fewer times than you might in another unit. What did you feel about that particular mission set?
I think most people would probably be dissatisfied taking that route. I love teaching. I love being a Green Beret because of the challenges, but I think I would have loved more to clear buildings with my team. I would have loved to spend time with the boys, getting in gunfights with the boys. Like, I think that would have been fun. I'm not gonna lie to you, like some of the worst experiences of my life were trying to clear compounds with guys that don't want to go inside. You know, there was a time when it was me and my teammate, and we're 360 contact. We're getting shot from all over, and we drove the MATVs into like basically a mountain bowl. So they have the high ground all around us. We're in a horrible spot, and the commandos are gone. I don't know where they're at. And then we get over the radio, "Hey, Sean and so, my echo at the time, our echo, I need you guys to get your commandos." I love how I said that. "Get your commandos and then go clear the rest of that valley." So our commandos were gone. We're like, we don't, yeah. And we radio back, we said, "We don't know where our commandos are." Like, once we started taking contact, it was me, my echo, my amazing EOD tech who is a hero, and he's one of the bravest men, Travis. He's one of the bravest men I've ever met in my life. He's always like, he just would chase me around. I don't know why, but everyone wanted to shoot at me. And every time I turned around, this fucking giant ex-football, ex-NFL playing fucking Travis EOD guy is on my ass. And I'm like, listen, man, I love you for this, but you don't have to do that, right? Like, you're not trained. You're trained to find bombs. You're out there all day finding bombs. And then every time I fucking turn around, you're trying to help me in a gunfight. And so yeah, he's just got more balls than fucking brains, that guy. He's so brave, dude. And so it's us three shooting and like trying to find out where they're coming from. And then it's our JTAC, and he's out fucking, or combat controller, which one's their special forces? I always forget like the difference. JTAC and CCT. CCT I think is theirs. So he's out standing in the fucking open, like calling in so he's coordinating the Apache above, and he's standing wide open, like, and I'm like, hey, I was like, get down, dude, take cover. And he's like, I was like, you gotta fucking take cover, bro, you're getting shot at. And he's like, fuck him. And he finally I yell at him enough, he jumps in the back of the MATV and then stands up in the back of the MATV. He ends up winning. I think he got the Air Force Silver Star on the next deployment, and then I think he gets like another one on the deployment after that.
Wow.
He's a fucking, the dude just can't stop being a maniac. But then you added all that experience, and now he's just he's a hero. He's incredible, right? But that was one of his first combat interactions, and he was just out in the open. It just called it. But anyway, so the point of the story was, they're gone, like, right? We're in combat. We're supposed to be 2 Green Berets and 15, 20 commandos. And here we are, 2 Green Berets and EOD tech and a CCT standing way out in the fucking open. So by the time he was like, go get your commandos, I see one sitting up against the wall smoking a cigarette, and he just, having the time of his life. He's just sitting there. He's like, I'm gonna finish my smoke. We're literally like shooting, and then I look over and I was like, dude, you see any more? He's like, I see one over there. So like, we got 2. I got one over there. One was here smoking. I yell at the guy. I was like, hey man, shoot back. And he's like, 1 minute. Like, just like gives me this hang on sign. And I was like, this motherfucker. And so my echo is like, fuck, and we just got to go find him, man. He's like, our team sergeant's not going to give up on this. He wants us to clear it. Let's just go do it. Let's just fucking get it done. And I could tell, like, this was his last deployment. He's got kids. He's, married. He has a whole career lined up. He was actually leaving midway through that deployment. So his mind is, I'm the fuck out of here. So I could hear it in his voice, like, let's do this, but let's, don't go nuts. Let's just get this done and get safe. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I always went with him. I knew he was in that frame of mind, but I also knew he would never leave us without having our backs. And thank God he made it home safe. But so I go with him, and then we're yelling at him to come with us. And we ended up finding like 6. We start clearing the valley because it was just like a bunch of small little huts. And we look behind us. I think we had 1 with us. So of all the 6 that started, that we had like herded all the cats together, as soon as we turned around, the cats went back to their spots and started smoking or doing whatever. So one of them came with us, and all of a sudden, me and my echo, we've made like 2 or 3 turns. And I was like, dude, CQB, you don't go without your team more than 2 rooms deep. Like, now we're running the potential of we're back clearing on our own guys. Like, this is getting really, really dangerous. And it's just me and him and like 1 commando with us. So we're like, this is stupid. And so we actually just called it up. Hey, clear. We cleared it. We're moving out. Didn't find anything. We had probably 35 more little huts, because it was like a maze. They're all connected. We probably had like 35 more, but we're like, no, this is too dangerous. So we ended up just calling it. we called the whole thing clear, backed out. And then as soon we jump in the MAP Vs, because we made like a little perimeter to shoot from. My buddy who's in law school now, he was, letting him have it with the 50. We start to leave. And all of a sudden, as we're leaving, all our commandos are here. They're all ready to go. They're all ready to go. They're, in their Humvees, and they're, yeah, let's go. And one of them, it was funny. He was in the turret sleeping. And as we're leaving, he's like just kicking back in the turret with his, he's just laying back. And I swear he was sleeping. And I look at him, and just as I look at him, and I'm about to I'm cussing him out in my head. Because meanwhile, I forgot to mention, my interpreter ended up getting shot in the leg. So he was fine. He was like, fuck, they shot me. And I was, he squealed. Like he became, as soon as they shot him, like his voice, he changed into like a 13-year-old girl. He's man. And I look at his leg, and I was like, they sure did, man. I was like, you got a hole right there. Nice, clean, right through the muscle, out the back of his leg. He was fine. So patched him up. Like, let's get out of here. All of a sudden, our commandos are all lined up, ready to go in their Humvees. And this guy's sleeping, and I hear, and I see the RPG like do like a little spin turn, and he over his face, it goes, and he wakes up. He's like, oh shit. And so on our way out of the valley, that's when we realized their real plan was just to stir us up, wait for us to leave, and they let us have it with everything.
Really?
Yeah, we were taking RPGs left and right. Rounds were flying on the way out. So we found that was their TTPs is let them come in super quiet. You'll drive in thinking you're just in a normal village. All of a sudden you start seeing, bad signs like, where are the kids? Where are the women? And it's just a bunch of males walking around. And then they'll let you in. A few people will pop off at you from, covered positions. So you waste a lot of time getting in a gunfight. You think you're in the real fight. And so you spend a lot of time, coordinating air, shooting back, and then after you finally call it, they realize that, hey man, which is a smart move on their part. We're getting tired. We've expended a bunch of ammunition. We took a casualty. So we got one guy with a hole in his leg. And then now on your way out, they give you everything they have. And if they could hit you with an RPG, luckily they missed, like they got really, really close, but they missed all the RPGs because they disable a vehicle. Now,
oh man, yeah.
Now we're in bad shape because now we're stuck on the X and we're stuck in an ambush.
Did you guys just drive your way out of that?
Yep. We just kept driving and just taking rounds, taking RPGs, and just trying to keep their heads down. And luckily, like I said, none of the vehicles got hit with RPGs. We took some small arms, but those things are full armored. So
yeah.
Damn. The captain got back and he was like, oh man, because he brought a Mioplex with him, and he had it in his backpack attached to the outside of the vehicle, and his Mioplex got shot and leaked his Mioplex all over his stuff. And he's like, oh man, they got my Mioplex. So he had milk just soaked in all his
awesome
shit.
Damn. All right, so that's kind of what it's like. It's not as illustrious and sexy as you might think, rolling around with some Afghan commandos on a hit as people might picture it. Yeah.
No, and then there's tiers. So we also worked with another team was assigned to them permanently, but they were attached to us for one op, and it was their next level. They have like a tier 1 special guys.
Yeah.
Like we're Green Berets, we have CAG. Well, they have a tier 1 element, and it's like a small team of dudes. And at one point, which is no fault to theirs, we made a stupid decision as a team to put a 50 cal on top of a rooftop to try and get cover fire. Well, that 50 cal now requires, with a small team of, I think there was like 5 of them, and there's like 2 Green Berets and a couple commandos. Now we have boxes of ammunition, 50 cal ammunition. We have an extra barrel. We have a tripod. We have the gun itself, and we have whatever weapon systems we're carrying. We took them out of the fight and asked them to run across an open field to get to that high ground. to that building. And they were just like, they got us to that building and they were like, all right, we're leaving. And we're like, what do you mean you're leaving? Like, you're with us. Like, you guys are assigned to us for this mission. They're like, nah, we're leaving. And so my buddy, same guy, the same Echo, he's like, guys, I'm sorry, but this is the mission we're assigned to do. Like, if you leave, then we could fail that mission. Like, don't you want to allow our leadership to talk to your leadership? And now we're in a combat zone trying to play the whole political game. And they said, our general will talk to you. Like, he basically big dicked us with his higher ups. And he was like, you guys can come with us. You can go put that shit back, all that 50 cal shit. You can go put that shit back, and then you can come with us and we'll go get into some gunfights. But we're not staying with you because that was a stupid plan and we don't trust you anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we're like, my Echo was like, you're right. It was a stupid plan. We didn't agree to this plan. We didn't have a choice in this plan, but we got to make decisions on the fly. So let's go put this shit back and let's fix this. And that's part of being a Green Beret, is like, you have to accommodate your hosts. Like, you can't, they don't work for you. And if you can't be a good speaker and you can't empathize with their situation and their leadership and work with, you're working with you're an E6 working with generals sometimes, like in their army.
Yeah.
So you have to understand your operational environment. And we basically, broke our orders to maintain that relationship and that rapport in order to move the mission forward.
Yeah. Damn. Well, if we then pivot slightly to, if you take me to an event that is memorable for you, where maybe it's a near death, or something that just still sticks with you today, could you kind of talk us through one of those? And then I want to spend some time on FNG Academy. I have a lot of just my own curiosity here in what's going on with that.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking about that today. And one point, it's funny because I never talked about this before, but we were in a convoy, and this is a point where I was truly, truly terrified. And so we're in a convoy and we're heading, like, you can't see, the convoy's so long, you can't really see what's going on. And again, that badass I was talking about, Travis, while we're all in armored vehicles, he's out front walking, no armor, by himself. Like, he's not always entirely by himself. He's got security, but he's just exposed, not even looking up. He's just swiping his thing, scanning for IEDs. God, that guy's crazy as shit. So we're all backed in this long ass convoy. And all of a sudden my team sergeant's like, hey, Buck, let's get out and hoof it. Let's see what's going on. I was like, all right. So we jump out and I look up and I see, it's just buildings, like right here to my right, 2-story buildings, and it's buildings to my left. And we're just right in the middle. And I for the first time, I had gotten this like super eerie feeling. I was like, somebody's watching me. Somebody's pointing their gun at me right now. I could feel it. My skin, like my hair was going up on the back of my neck. I was terrified. I wanted with every ounce of me to get back in the MATV in the protection, because I fucking knew that somebody was staring at me. And so I'm just looking in, but my team sergeant wants to walk. So we're walking. I didn't see the purpose in it, but whatever, he's the boss. So we're walking. And I'm looking in all the windows and I can't see them. I can't see where they're looking at me from, but I fucking knew it. And then all of a sudden, the buildings come to an end. So the buildings are right on top of us. They stop. At the end of that building is this huge, probably like 2 football field gap. And then this tree line, thick tree line. So Travis makes it to the gap. And as soon as he starts getting into this like open area, they start taking contact. And Travis, again, he's nuttier and squirrel turd. He doesn't stop scanning and start shooting back. He keeps scanning the road. So then he finds an IED in the center of the road. And he's like, he fucking breaks it. We're all shooting, trying to get their heads down. He just keeps doing his crazy fucking scanning. finds an IED. So basically, like hindsight, it was a scary situation because there probably was someone watching me. There were probably the spotter or someone who was going to detonate the IED once we got a couple vehicles past it. And then we were going to be stuck and they were going to initiate their ambush, once they hit us with that IED. So Travis saved us and found it. He, instead of getting stuck digging it out, he just popped a chem light, put it on top of the IED. So that was a weird feeling. He's like, hey, make sure you go around.
Don't drive on that thing.
So we're walking past and I was like, Brian, his kind of his junior EOD tech, I was like, he was standing there making sure everyone knew. And I was like, Brian, is that the fucking IED right there? And he's like, yeah, don't step on it. I was like, what the fuck?
Oh,
I was like, did you disarm it? And he's like, no, we don't got time for that shit. And he's like, just don't walk right there and then you're good. And so we went around it. But there was a lot of close calls, but that was the first time in my life that I ever felt that I was like the hunted and I was just waiting to be either shot at or I was completely vulnerable. And it was horrible, creepy feeling.
Dude, was there ever a moment where you felt like, oh, this is the cool high speed shit that I thought I was signing up for?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
tell me about one of those. So
the first time we were in a compound, kind of like bedding down, and then our sister team 2-1, they were out getting it and we could hear them. They were just getting after it. Gunfire's going off like crazy. I'm like, man, 2-1 is getting after it. I could hear the minigun just and I'm like, they're getting after it. And the idea was we're gonna, leapfrog. So once they were done, then we would come in and leapfrog past them as a team.
Are you with commandos, Sean, at this time?
Yes. Yeah, so we're with commandos, but we're also together as a team. We haven't split the commandos into separate units yet.
Right.
So we're all together as a team where all our commandos are there. We're just a huge force. So they're a huge force 2-1 because they have their own company of commandos, and we're a huge force because we have our own company, and we're just waiting for them and listening. And it's like everyone's just itching to go help. And my team sergeant's like, hey, they need ammo resupply. Who wants to go? And I was like, yes, thank you. I was like, I'm in, let's go. And so we jump in the Razor, we throw a bunch of ammunition, some waters and all that stuff on the Razor, and we start driving out. And I was like a kid sitting in the passenger seat of this M Razor, like, this is my chance. And I look over and I see a commando, and then like a round goes off like right in front of him, and then he falls and he's just like out, and then he gets back up, he's fine. But you could hear the rounds kind of like zipping over. That was one thing that was crazy, is like you really get an ear for what direction the rounds are going. So like when me and my buddy were sleeping, like, taking a power nap in that guy's house, even though gunfights were going on, we knew that none of it was directed at us because we got very accustomed to the sound of when it was coming your way and when it was at somebody else. Wow. So we knew, like, they're in gunfights, not us. We're fine. But so we go up and we link up with the sister team, and I see one of my buddies, and he's just on the minigun, and he just let him have it. He ends up not letting up because I had just graduated that minigun school, the Dillon Arrow, and I'm like, man, he's holding that too long. He is holding that too long. Like, just it's supposed to be like quick bursts so you can let the barrels cool down. And I was like, hey dude, where are they at? And he's like, that way. And I just start like, she's ripping them. Because at this point, it's like, listen, this valley's been clear for 2 days. Everyone in here is enemy. We know that. They know that. And so I'm looking for flashing, and I'm just sending it. And it was just the time of my life. It was like that before war sets in, to where you realize that stupid shit's going to happen, mistakes are going to happen, people are going to get hurt. It was just all the good stuff. Nobody was hurt. We hadn't lost anybody on the teams. Like, we were just winning, and it was just the highlight of my war experience before all the reality sets in, and you start This kid in a candy store just shooting his gun, just like I'm just happy to be here. I probably didn't hit a damn thing. I was probably shooting at walls, but I didn't give a shit.
Was it nighttime?
No, it was the middle of the day.
Daylight, man. Damn.
Yeah,
awesome.
We really didn't fight that much at night. It was kind of a weird thing because we would move, night would happen, and they would bed down.
Yeah,
and
they don't want to fight you at night.
No, because then the aircraft would just all night long you're boom, boom, like that's when they're fighting at night, and everyone in the sky is just tearing them a new ass, and we're trying to get a couple hours of sleep, so we could push the next day. So we did a couple where we would go try to hunt down the guys that are near us, but really there's no need to, because the aircraft is like, we have them on infrared. Like the minute they move towards you, it's like, doo, doo, doo. And then, so all night long they're like 2 KA, 1 KA, 3 KA, and it's like they're just massacring people like all night because they keep moving on us.
Yeah.
So we became basically bait. Like we'll just sleep, and then they move, and like that guy's gone.
Gun pilots everywhere. Thank you for being bait in that.
Yeah, absolutely. They would just tear them up, and then the next morning it's like we'd start patrol and be like, oh, there's one. Oh, got that one. Oh my God, got that one. Like, what did they hit him with? Like, my goodness, so it's like, oh my God,
dude.
So we got to see the work of the aircraft, the night before, and it's pretty intense.
So as we transition out of some of these crazy events, I am personally very curious, from being somebody who has a podcast and all the work that I know that goes into it, to see what you're doing with FNG Academy. So I'd love to talk a bit about it. Could you just give me an idea of where did it come from for you, and how quickly did you end up building this up as you came out of the service?
Yeah. So when I was getting out of the service, I had no intention whatsoever of being online, of doing anything like that. I was not like, oh, I was special forces, now I'm gonna go use that to create a name for myself. Now I went to the police department. I was like, this is what I do. I want to serve. I just want to do it from a different capacity. So I'm gonna go be police. And then the riots happened, and I was like, maybe I found myself having like anxiety attacks, and my PTSD was kicking up and flaring up way bad in the police department. And so I was like, I need to move on from here. Like, this is negatively impacting my health and my life. I had to talk to a psychologist for a while and figure out what was going on and why a police department, which is something I didn't expect to flare up my PTSD, was having such an impact on me. And then came to the conclusion that it's just not the career for me. And it's time for me to do something that was less, dangerous, I guess you would say, but seriously, but less dangerous, and something that would allow me to relax and get control of, my emotional stuff from childhood, from war, from now the police department and the crazy things that were going on there. So I found that I thought, like, well, helping people has always been something I like to do. So it feels very therapeutic to me to help people. And I had the book coming out, Rising Above, which I thought that maybe my story could help some people. And I thought, well, why stop there? Why don't I use the book's release as a way to continue to help people? It's like, how could I help people? I love YouTube. I watched like Jeremy Sires and smoke cigars and drink whiskey on YouTube and smoke cigars. So I like going to YouTube to learn things. So I'm like, maybe I could use YouTube as a platform to try and help some people along, the book release and stuff like that. So I was invited to a podcast. It was called Badass Dads, and it was run by Kevin, who not many people know, but he just recently passed away from COVID. So he invited me on the podcast, and he's like, hey man, like, why don't we do a podcast together where you just teach people stuff, and I'll ask you from the civilian side, like what it's like, and then you use your special operations to like teach life lessons. He's like, I think that would be really cool. And I was like, let's do it. And so he's like, well, come up with the podcast. It'll be your podcast and I'll just be, you know, a co-host. And I was like, all right. So I was like, we came up with the FNG podcast. I was like, cause it's going to be for fucking new guys, you know, like how do we help new guys? And then that turned into what I should do videos. And then, so I started doing videos to talk about some of the things that me and Kevin were talking about on the podcast. And I didn't think anyone would watch it. So I just put it out there and was like, man, it feels good. I decided to do something and I did it. And then all of a sudden it was like 1,000 views and then 1,000 subscribers. And I was like, what? 1,000 people are like click and subscribe on this. Like, I'm just talking about like my mistakes and things like that. And I didn't realize it, but because I approached it from the point of, hey, this is the failures that I had, and this is how you could avoid them. It humanized me to these people that want to be special operations, because so many people will get online from special operations and are like, I'm the toughest thing on the planet. You'll never be as tough as me. So don't even try, you know, and not that they intend to do that, but when you just so macho and always talking about the tough guy stuff, you forget that you're kind of alienating a lot of people who don't feel like macho tough guys. And I certainly did not, and was not, and am not. And I was able to do it and had a good run at it. So how could we convince those people that you don't have to be that? And I think that's where the channel started to pick up. And all of a sudden it's been just over a year and we hit 90,000 subscribers. And that started into, okay, well, how do we help them more? And I was like, well, if I start an online store and I start getting them the best equipment that me and my friends as Green Berets found to help us the most, and we just supply them that equipment and we tell them why that's the best equipment, and whatever, you know, it is, we go find it, wholesale it, and then resell it to get it to these guys. So they walk in having all the best equipment, and then we do videos teaching them how to use it and why it's the best equipment, and, you know, giving them options. So now it became this like, and then we brought on another Green Beret who's going to do one-on-one mentorship. So we have a mentorship program so he'll do, you know, weekly calls, updates. Hey, how's it going? You know, how are you doing? And then we have the store giving them the best equipment. And then we have the videos giving them the advice and letting them know that they can do it. So we've become like this full circle thing that's like, we're going to increase as many people's chances, but we're also going to increase the number of people that sign up for selection as much as we possibly can. If FNG Academy could send thousands of people to sign up for 18 X-ray contracts or to convince them to go be special forces, then what's going to happen is now the pool in selection is so much bigger that now the cadre could be like, we could be so picky. You're the best. You're the best. You're the best. You're the best. And then the force just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And, you know, we essentially are building the people that are going to protect us and helping be safer at home now that we're not in a fight anymore. So that became the goal of the FNG Academy, is like, I want to be one of the biggest recruitment tools for our special operations forces. But here's the difference. I'm not telling them this is the greatest job you'll ever do in your life and there's no downside. We're going to tell them exactly what they're getting into. We're going to tell them all the stuff that they're going to hate. We're going to tell them all the bullshit they're going to deal with. And that way, the ones that sign up, when that bullshit happens, like fucking inventories for 24 hours straight, because your captain's, yeah.
Hit me with PTSD on this side, man.
Because you have 10,000 serial number items and your new company commander is completely anal on seeing every single one in their end item. You're going to say, man, Buck told me about this. I knew it was going to suck. It's part of the fucking job. Let's get it done. Instead of, I didn't know that this is what we dealt with. This is bullshit. Now I'm bitter. Now I don't like regiment and I don't like my job and I'm never going to get to do anything cool. And now I'm just one more bitter fucking guy in the army or in the military being toxic towards everybody else. Like, listen, man, we were very fucking clear with you that this is the BS you're going to deal with. You chose to do this anyway. So you know very well what you're getting into, which is something I had no idea what I was getting into.
Damn. Is maybe you mentioned earlier, you kind of just alluded to it, that there's a videographer, right? And
Yeah.
now you've got partners. Could you just for a second give people an idea of how long it takes you to put together one of your videos?
So some of them range from like an hour of shooting and just me editing. So the talking head ones, I have my studio here. I'll shoot. I'll spend, 25, 30 minutes talking. I'll send it to my videographer. He'll do the color grading. He'll adjust the audio so it sounds decent, sends it back to me. Then I edit it through Final Cut Pro. And then once it's edited, then I'll upload it. So it's a few hour process to get the talking heads done. And then we try to have 2 talking heads a week. But then we also film shows, because one of our other goals is to entertain as much as possible, because guys are going to need that, girls are going to need that going through. We need to laugh. It's part of Black Rifle success. It's part of the reason that we get through some of the tougher times, is that we have fun and we laugh, and we show people a different side of special operations. So we do shows, and the shows is where the videographer and one of my business partners gets involved. Is we'll fly to, like, we got Montana coming up in a couple weeks to film with Andy Stump for season 3 of Wine and Rations. And then, so he'll fly all of his equipment, he shoots everything, and then edits everything, and the whole 9. And then we run a show, Green Beret Versus, which we just did with Evan Hafer. We did with Andy. We got Nick Bear lined up from Bear Performance Nutrition. And so we do that show. So that's another one that we all fly out and film. And then we do one called Sucks to Suck. So that's when my whole team competes with each other. And then Kurt lost the last one. So he had to wear a pink tutu bar hopping around Montana. So it's a ton of work. It's like,
Yeah.
we're always planning content, because we have to stay ahead of the content.
Yep.
So we have these huge expensive trips planned monthly for the big content, and that's what Abel takes care of. And then I take care of the talking heads throughout the week. And then we have another one of my business partners, Kurt, who runs the store. He's also starting to do talking heads. So we started introducing him.
Nice.
Like on the Black Rifle podcast, he went with me. And then, we did a Beers and Breakdowns where we talk about 2 Weeks in Hell. He was there. So the whole idea is that we start introducing him as, one of the founders, and so he could start doing talking heads. Because if I get that gig, which I told you about earlier, I'll be traveling the world for a few months doing that. So then he could step in, because it doesn't have to be me. That's the thing. Our mission is the same, whether it's this Green Beret telling you the best advice or that Green Beret. I'm not attached to me being the face of all of this. Like, as long as they get selected at a higher rate, then we achieve our goal.
Yeah. So with that in mind, with all the work that goes into it, and this is a tough question, I think, but as you look back at the content that you put out, what are 2 or 3 of your favorite videos or content that you've created? And it doesn't have to be the ones that got a ton of views. Maybe it is, or maybe it's an underrated one that you just really enjoyed doing. Like, what comes to mind for you?
Oh, so absolutely. One of the first ones I did that was kind of like funny, laughing, was still to this day my favorite one. And that's the Bob Ross. I dressed up like Bob Ross, and I was like, painting your SF career. Today we're going to paint your SF career. And then, where he slaps the brush and all that shit. And I did the wig, and like, it was so stupid that my wife watched it, and she was like, "You're not gonna put that out though, right? Like, that's funny, but you're not gonna." And I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm gonna put that out." She's like, "Okay." She's like, "You're going completely left from what you told me you were gonna do, which you do whatever you want to do." She's like, "But you're like serious helping these guys, talking about your failures and all that stuff. And then here you come with this weird ass Bob Ross, slapping the fucking paintbrush thing." And I was like, "Yeah, it's my channel. I'm gonna do what I want." And she's like, "All right." And that was one of the funnest ones I've ever done. And then I think an underrated one, and one of the hardest ones to produce and to film, is Sucks to Suck. And it didn't get that many views. And unfortunately, we haven't had many come out, because it's like, we have four team members, four members of the FNG Academy. We're just about to add a fifth, but they're all in different locations. One's still active duty, Green Beret. We got one prior Green Beret running the store. We got a videographer in California, myself. So like we had to fly everyone from all over, and then we had to pick something to compete at, film, and you know, in all that, and then we have to find the punishment, and the punishment has to be good, and then we got to go film the punishment. So it's like filming 5 shows for this one show.
Yeah.
And then we drop it, and we're just like, there it is.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. It's the best thing we've ever done. It's so good. And then it's just like, beep, boop, like nobody watched it. And like Abel is just like ripping his hair out. If he had, he's bald, but if he had hair, he'd be ripping it out, because it's like, he put so much work into editing that video and making it what it is. And it's just like nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game that people don't understand, is like, you have to just do what you enjoy and send it. And because if you start chasing views and you start chasing like, oh, this one did really well, so I'm going to do that over and over and over again. It's like, that's not fun. That's not you anymore. It's not fun to do anymore.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're always going to chase an algorithm that doesn't make any damn sense. I could talk about one thing and it's like skyrockets. I'll talk about something, I'm like, this is really, really important. This is a gold nugget that really changed my life. And it doesn't do anything. You just never know. So you just keep staying the course, and, you know, knowing that there are people out there that are being helped, whether the video does good or not. And, you know, you'll get there.
And then as we look at the book, right? I mean, I've heard that writing a book is incredibly difficult. Would you put it up there with like Selection or RASP?
So yes, yeah, especially the first one. That first book was super tough because it's about my childhood and it's about things I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was therapeutic for me to get it out there, and that's why the book, it's a quick read. Like I didn't want to dive in super deep into all that stuff. I didn't want to spend a lot of time in that zone. I wanted to just get it out. So people were like, dude, I read it in a day. I'm like, that's awesome. And awesome. I know there's like a stigma of, you know, oh, you just wanted to write a book to get a book out. So you wrote this little, like, you know, quick thing, and so you can call yourself an author. But if they read the book, they'll see that that's not it for me. It's to the point. I want to tell you what happened in my life, to explain where I'm at and why, and how other people can get there. And now through that process, I found that I actually, like, once I was finished with the book, I enjoy writing, and I found it to be like super therapeutic.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah. So then I was like, well, I'm going to keep writing then. And so now every morning I have my coffee, and I wake up early before my family, so I have time to drink my coffee and I could just write. And so I got, you know, partially through, I'm almost finished with my book number 2, and, you know, Jocko Publishing has it to make the determination if they're gonna publish it. So I think I'm just gonna keep writing books.
Can you share what the topic is, or is it still close hold?
Yeah, no. So it's about, it's all the lessons I learned to become successful, but mainly it's about why people with broken backgrounds and PTSD and childhood trauma, prior, you know, special operations guys or prior military guys, why not only they should be successful, but why they need to be successful. And I think that when you struggle with mental illness, you have a lot of triggers, and the more success that you could create for yourself, the more you could adjust your lifestyle to fit those triggers, so you could ease and flow through life at such a more healthy way, you know. So because I found success in life, I could avoid a lot of things that really set me off. Like, because I work from home and I found success doing that, I don't drive in rush hour traffic. So my stress level and my, you know, anxiety flare-ups has gone exponentially down just from the fact that I don't have to drive in rush hour traffic. So if you find success, if you use the keys to success that I have used, like avoiding debt, you know, understanding your credit score, not fearing failure, not fearing success. One thing a lot of people don't talk about is success can be terrifying. if you take these tips and you make yourself a successful person, then you too could you could adjust and ebb and flow past your triggers, and then refocus all that energy to things that really matter, like your family, your loved ones, a career that you really enjoy, and things like that.
Love it, man. All right. I got a couple questions I ask everybody just before I get you out of here. I just want to make sure if there's anything else you're working on that you wanted to share, we take a minute here to do that. But if not, I'll jump into these questions.
No, I think if I had those two things, the book's coming. I'm hoping, and this is the reason I'm hoping Jocko picks up. It's not because I need Jocko. It's because Jocko is one of my mentors, and in the book I talk about finding mentors and how you need to, especially for people that don't have parents in their lives, your mentor could be that guiding star, right? I've never even met Jocko. I've only talked to him through email, but he's always been one of my mentors, because if you think Jocko, when you think how he reacts in business, you could almost picture the way he would respond to something, right? Like, it would be this even keeled, thoughtful, very professional approach, because that's what he puts off. So at least in my head, that's how he would act. So I try to mimic that when I'm having moments of weakness and I want to lash out at somebody, or I'm feeling like disrespected. I'm like, I got to think about what my mentor, even though I haven't met him, and I have many, Jocko, what would Jocko do in the situation? How would he respond to this? So I think it would just be full circle for me if he put his name on the book, and then now we're working together. So he became, from my mentor, I was able to put it out there to the world that I'm like, I'm going to connect him to this book. So if he decides to do it, that would be nuts, right? It would be just a justification, one more justification for everybody who's reading the book, that when you really just commit wholeheartedly to something, you can make things happen that you never thought possible. And I never thought that, I would even be in communication with Jocko, let alone him considering doing my book. But if that goes, and then the thing that me and you talked about, if that goes, I mean, things are going to be exponentially different for me by end of next year.
That's awesome. I did want to ask you in particular, I'm glad you brought up the mentorship piece. I mean, you grew up without the father that many people would look to as the mentor, or like the father figure. And I know you're a father now. I'm sure you're a great dad because of what you saw growing up. I was curious who you ended up finding to be kind of that role model or father figure yourself, when that happened for you and who that became.
So for me, and I think it's a great question, because I have a lot. My grandfather was a big one. There's Jocko in a way. I use Goggins. I have some personal friends. I mean, my business partner Abel, and his approach to life and issues is so different than mine. He grew up with good parents, and he's just a great person. He's very even keeled. So I always look to him and to see how he reacts. I'll be like, I can't believe this person did that. And he's like, well, it's not a big deal. What if he was thinking this? And I'm like, well, that would be justifiable. And he's like, well, then that's probably what he was thinking. So calm down, you know? So I pick a lot of mentors, in all of which are different than me and help balance me. And I think that's important for people to understand, is that a mentor is someone that's been where you want to go. They've done the hard things, but it's also just someone that's different from you in a positive way, because we all have weaknesses. So what kind of mentor can you pick up that balances out your weaknesses? And you don't even have to know them. I get so much from these guys that are out there because they put themselves out there. Kevin Hart, Will Smith, I've completely devoured their autobiographies or their memoirs. I just got done listening to Will, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I mean, you see these guys,
so good,
dude.
Yeah,
you don't have to know them. You know what kind of people they are. You know how much they hustle. You know where they put their emphasis. And then to listen to Will, his memoir, and have him talk about being the biggest movie star on the planet, but then being unhappy. And that, I think, is the big thing for all of us, that will figure out how to be successful. Success is a formula that we could all get. You've done it multiple times. You figured out the formula for CIA. You figured out the formula for a pilot, which how many people fail to become pilots. It's astronomical. When you figure out success, it's just a formula, but that's not going to make you that's not going to make you happy. You know, it's almost easy to figure out that formula and be successful. How do you be happy? That's the hard part.
So true. All right, I love it. Okay, so 2 questions I ask everybody. The first is, and I'm interested here based on what you do with gear. So was there anything that you used to take into combat with you that had sentimental value that you just had to have on you? Maybe somebody gave it to you and it, good luck, whatever.
Yeah. So my first deployment, when I decided I want to be a Green Beret, it was because I'd witnessed a Green Beret coming into the aid station. I went to help and he was killed. And the pastor, what do they call him in the military?
Chaplain?
The chaplain. Thank you. So the chaplain was putting the flag, and I was helping it was me, the chaplain, mortuary affair. We were putting the flag on his body bag and stapling it on. And the chaplain cut the gold rings off that come with the flag. And he hands it to me and he goes, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I took the gold ring from him and I was like, more like, you have no idea. Like, this cemented the fact that this is what I want to do. So I kept that gold ring in my breast pocket for years and years and years.
Wow. I've never heard of that. They cut it off just so it's not part of the flag that's draped or goes with the body?
Yeah. So when we opened the flags, they had 2 like gold rings to hang them from the flag. So we would cut those off, fold the flag in half, and then you would staple the flag to the body bag for his hero ceremony as he's getting flown out of country. So that way, when he gets carried out, he's always got his flag with him.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So he handed me that gold ring, and I kept that for a long time. And that was my like Q course kind of thing. Is like I would always just touch that as a reminder that my pain at the moment was not comparable to the reality of what we're doing. Training is always going to be training. And that took me back to the fact that no matter how much pain I think I'm in or how sad and poopy I am, this is training and this is not real. And that was a real moment.
And we didn't even touch on your ultra marathons and your running and whatnot. So I feel bad that we didn't even talk about that pain. Last question is, as you kind of look back at this time and you touched on the PTSD and the difficulties you had along the way, the injuries and sacrifice, would you go back and do that military career again?
100%. Absolutely. I think the only difference I would make is I would tell that recruiter, find me an infantry slot for Rangers and call me when it's available. And I guarantee I would have got a call the next day and all of a sudden it would have been magically available.
For sure.
That would have been my change.
Love it. Awesome. Sean, dude, I'm so appreciative of the time, man. This is really cool. I know you've got a lot going on and it's all moving in such a great direction, and had no idea how hard your life was growing up until really digging in and researching it. I feel bad myself for how the silver spoon I basically had in comparison and how much you've achieved. So thanks so much for spending time with me and with us. It's been great, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. And don't feel bad about that silver spoon. Just be proud of your parents, man. And my kid will have a silver spoon in her mouth. I guarantee you that.
Take care, man.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Our first comment is from YouTube, and it's from Fights on Military Aviation Enthusiasts about Dan Hampton, who, if you'll recall, was an F-16 pilot with 4 distinguished flying crosses. He says, "Hey Ryan, greetings from Perth, Western Australia. I found your video while looking for Dan Hampton. I read his Viper pilot book a year or 2 ago and loved it. Still one of my favorite military aviation books. Great interview, and his good luck charm was very amusing. Personally, I think this is one of the most underrated interviews we did. So it was shorter than most. It was probably less than an hour. Dan had something else he had to get to. But Dan was a no-kidding, serious fighter pilot who has some awesome stories. And he's a writer, an accomplished writer. But for those who haven't listened to that one, because you're thinking, it's a pilot, might not be like listening to a Delta guy. This is a Delta guy in the air. But 100%. I mean, he describes coming down through the clouds, looking for an Iraqi regiment, and finds a division. And I felt like I was in the cockpit listening to it. but his outlook on life is like he's a tier 1 operator. They just don't have those in the air the same way they do on the ground. So if you're looking for somebody who was tip of the spear, incredibly accomplished, with an awesome story and probably my favorite good luck charm, it's the Dan Hampton interview. Anyway, thanks for leaving that all the way from Australia. Appreciate it. Our second comment is also from YouTube, and it's left by Antoine Brousseau on Travis Hall. It says, listening to Travis talk about bear is the purest love one can ever witness. So Travis Hall, long time Green Beret. He was one of the first folks to be trained up to do canine ops with special forces. And that's not all he did, but he had a stint where he did that. And now he runs Second Chance Canine. And his dog that he took downrange that he really loved was this dog named Bear. And he eventually was able to get Bear back as he started Second Chance Canine. It's a really cool story that brings everything full circle, and it really shows the relationship between the dog handler and the dog. And I'm always curious when I interview guys who have done this, like, you have to be so close to that animal so that it works the way you need it to, but also so it trusts you and listens and obeys. But I think in particular, it was interesting to understand how you send something like that into harm's way when you're that close. And you can really hear that as Travis describes his relationship with Bear. So thanks for leaving that, and stay safe.